Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Citizens Planning Academy 2.0 on affordable housing. We're so glad that you all chose to join us tonight, and we really just appreciate, in general, you all taking the time to be to become more engaged citizens of Fayette County. I'll shut my door. So Fayette Alliance is so proud to present Citizens Planning Academy 2.0 sessions on a wide range of topics, from growing our city in a smart, equitable, and sustainable way to talking about agriculture and the significant impact that agriculture has on our community. So I do want to do a quick overview of Fayette Alliance and what we do for those of you who might be joining us for the first time or are new to Fayette Alliance events. So Fayette Alliance is a nonprofit land use advocacy organization. We are completely funded by donations from engaged citizens like you. We're dedicated to achieving a smart, equitable, and sustainable growth in Lexington-Fayette County through three main areas. The first is land use advocacy. So we work hard at City Hall and beyond to advocate for policies and laws to sustainably and equitably grow our city and preserve and promote our farms. We advocate for policies that promote community-driven investment and discourage displacement. The second way we achieve our work is through research. So we know that it's not if we grow, the question is how we grow. We focus on how by working with experts to conduct research on the complex issues that face our community's development. And the third way we achieve our mission is through education and events like this. So Citizens Planning Academy is our premier educational offering from Fayette Alliance. Our four-part session is offered every summer on an annual basis. We, in general, want to get citizens more involved and help them understand the issues that really face and impact our community. So we also have various in-person events through the year, just like tonight's session that's happening on Zoom, to hear from local experts on a variety of smart growth topics. So through our programs, through our newsletter, and our various social media channels that hopefully you follow us on, we want our community to really understand how land use decisions impact our community's health, economic development, environment, and quality of life, as well as how to advocate for smart and equitable land use policy. We know that historically and currently, inequitable and sometimes well-intentioned land use decisions have had a negative impact on marginalized communities, which often are communities of color. Before we jump in, I do want to mention a few housekeeping items for everyone. So everyone came into the session on mute, and I just ask you to please stay on mute until we go into our breakout sessions, which are voluntary and will be at the end of our evening tonight. So we ask that any questions that you all might have throughout our conversation with Justin and Elisa, please place in the chat at the bottom of the screen. And someone should have introduced the chat so you can see where to put your questions if you have them. And we will do our best to answer any questions that come up during the session in our question and answer session. And if we don't get to your question, we'll do our best to answer it afterwards and send out follow-up information if we can. So we will start off tonight's session with questions for our panelists, and then we'll get to question and answers from the audience. And for those of you who would like to stay after our panel discussion, we will invite you to stay and you'll be placed into breakout sessions for 15 minutes, and that will begin at 6:30. And that just is really a way to get to know other citizens who are interested in these topics and discuss what you've learned in our session and conversation tonight. So everyone should have received via email links to additional resources on affordable housing, and I highly recommend that you all check out the links that we've compiled. These are articles and resources that we've come across in our own reading, which we do a lot of in this work, and we certainly recommend that you all check out those resources and feel free to continue sharing with friends and colleagues those as you might see fit. So I do want to jump in and frame our conversation tonight, and then I will introduce our panelists. So equal access to housing is a fundamental civil right and is so critical to many individual and community social outcomes, ranging from economic prosperity to social equity. Access to housing is a goal that government, public officials, and private citizens must embrace if housing access is to become a reality in our community. In many areas across the US, a primary obstacle to housing is relative absence of affordable and diverse housing types, where all different types of families at different income levels can be close to where they work and play. Often, public policies implemented in cities can contribute to the lack of affordable housing, along with pushback from the community due to myths around diverse mixed income neighborhoods. Affordable housing is critical to our mission at Fayette Alliance, which is to positively impact planning and zoning laws through land use advocacy, education, and research that create a better quality of life for us all. Some of Lexington's zoning policies were written nearly a century ago, which is hard to imagine. These policies, some of which have disproportionately impacted marginalized communities, segregate our neighborhoods, and really stand in the way of smart growth for our community. Fayette Alliance defines smart growth as a strategy which does the following: encourages efficient land uses, provides housing options at all income levels, prioritizes investments in existing communities, stimulates economic development, and balances growth with the promotion of our prime farmland and strong rural economy. We hope that all of you joining us tonight leave this conversation with a better understanding to what the barriers are to affordable housing and increasing it here in Lexington-Fayette County, and how the Lexington Community Land Trust and REACH are working to fight these barriers. So next, I'm going to introduce our speakers, and then I'm going to ask everyone to take a quick poll. So we want to do a poll before we start our conversation to get a feel for how much everyone joining our conversation tonight knows about affordable housing, and then we'll do one at the end as well. So again, just going to introduce our panelists. We are so grateful to have Justin and Elisa here today. So Lisa Bruce, is the Director of Housing Education and Counseling at REACH, and very fortunate for Fayette Alliance, one of our board members. So Lisa is a native of Colombia, South America, a small business owner, and worked over 9 years in the banking industry, where she helped to empower Central Kentucky's growing Hispanic and Latino population in financial matters. She also continues to work diligently to bridge the language gap between new immigrants and the community at large. Elisa joined REACH in March 2014 as the Director of Homeownership Education and Counseling. She leads these programs as well as conducts outreach efforts to spread awareness and the need for financial education in area schools, colleges, and universities. Their outreach efforts also include nonprofit organizations and businesses throughout Kentucky. Elisa's passion for education, service, and culture shines through when helping individuals and families achieve their dream of homeownership. Her educational background includes a certification in business from UK, a bachelor's in child development and elementary education, and a Master of Arts in Education from the Universidad del Norte in Colombia, with an emphasis in educational leadership and recreation. Elisa has been recognized for her contributions, including the Unbridled Spirit Award, Excellence in Serving Immigrants in the Commonwealth Award from the Kentucky Commission on Human Rights, as well as the Rising Star Award from the Lexington Professional Association, among others. Elisa, thank you so much for joining us. Justin Kirshner is with the Lexington Community Land Trust and is the Director of Homeownership. He has been with the Land Trust since January of 2017. He graduated with a Master's of Public Administration from Murray State with a concentration in nonprofit leadership. His thesis was on the root causes of property abandonment in Lexington and the disparate outcomes related to vacant homes. He's proud to continue serving his hometown through the creation of permanently affordable homeownership opportunities and community-controlled land stewardship. He previously worked for Habitat Humanity in Indianapolis and Richmond, and is happy to bring his passion for community development back to Lexington, and we are lucky to have him. So before we jump into our conversation, again, we are going to do a quick poll, and then I will start off with our conversations with Justin and Elisa.
The polling is not working, unfortunately, so we'll have to skip that for tonight.
I was impressed that that was even an option. I'm learning new things about Zoom all the time, as I know we all are in this era of Zoom. All right, well, in that case, we will just jump right in to the discussion with our panelists. So once again, during our conversation, please feel free to put questions in the chat below, and Justin and Lisa, we will dive right in. So we will start with Elisa, and this question will then go to you, Justin, as well. So Elisa, tell us about REACH and how you work to increase access to affordable housing in Lexington.
Well, first, thank you for having me. And REACH is a private nonprofit organization that has been working for over 25 years to advance affordable housing opportunities in Fayette and surrounding counties. This has been accomplished through financial education, and resources, financial assistance options, and community housing development activities. So REACH provides housing education and counseling services to prepare all the clients for homeownership, as well as financial education to prepare and empower community residents from middle school to high schools and college. The agency increases access to affordable housing by providing down payment and closing cost assistance to first-time home buyers. Also accomplish this mission of affordable housing by serving as a community housing development organization, or CHODO, how it's called. So the agency can build homes or acquire and rehabilitate and resell existing homes to eligible clients. So that's how we do it.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Justin, what about you? Could you tell us a little bit about the Community Land Trust and how you all work to increase access to affordable housing here in Fayette County?
Sure. So I'll echo Elisa's thank you to everyone for joining and for Fayette Alliance for putting this on. I think just by showing up today, you know, affordable housing is such a critical issue for so many Lexingtonians. And so y'all's dedication, you know, to learning more and to doing more is greatly appreciated. Lexington Community Land Trust is a nonprofit organization. We were founded as a part of the Newtown Pike Extension Project, the new Oliver Lewis Way extension going from Versailles Road to Broadway here in downtown Lexington. We were founded really as the anti-displacement tool for the community of Davis Bottoms. You know, what our initial job was, what our inaugural project is to ensure that the original residents of Davis Bottoms who were disparately affected by the construction of the road. So because the road was designed to go through this neighborhood, which was a low-income neighborhood, it was a neighborhood of color. You know, there had to be some social justice mitigation to ensure that those affected by the project would be able to, you know, live in the new neighborhood. So we sorted any of those individuals who were original residents who wanted to stay in the historic Davis Bottoms. We, you know, put that as our first priority to ensure that they could stay in the neighborhood, in the community that they grew up in. Those who wanted to leave, you know, and we had some folks who wanted to move to California, live with family, things like that. So, you know, worked with them to ensure that they had sustainable and affordable housing in those places as well. You know, but the plan had always been to grow beyond that. We have always kept a priority status for any original resident of Davis Bottoms. So that if they applied, you know, if that person who moved to California wanted to move back, they have priority status because we are an anti-displacement tool. That being said, we are growing. So if you're familiar with the new Oliver Lewis Way, you might look over and see a lot of vacant land there. We are currently working on the construction plans for the rest of the neighborhood. Because it is community controlled land, that is, every resident in the neighborhood is a member of the organization and can serve on the board of directors. Because it is community controlled land, it's community controlled development and it's community controlled urban design. So we're asking the neighbors what they want to see in a neighborhood, what would make it affordable for them, what would make, you know, what kind of services, what kind of retail, things like that would best fit within a neighborhood for them. And so we're working with our partners to transfer the land from the state government to the city government and the city government to us. And as that land transfers to us, then we'll be able to continue building over 100 units of affordable housing in the Davis Park community, split roughly 50-50 between affordable rentals and affordable homeownership, as well as a 5-acre city park, about 5 acres of commercial development, including you know, some access to affordable and fresh food. That's been a commitment that we've had since this is a food desert. So really taking a 30,000 foot view of what an affordable housing community can include and what it should include. and creating that resident empowerment to have their voices direct the urban design of the neighborhood. You know, so that's really where we've been for the past 10 years, and we are in communication and doing community engagement with other communities throughout Lexington, especially those that are facing gentrification and displacement, you know, in communication with them as to how our model of permanent affordability and community control of the land can help stymie those negative effects of gentrification and displacement. So there's always a lot going on and a lot more to do, but we're thankful to have such great nonprofit partners in Lexington, you know, such as Reach and our friends at Fayette Alliance. So thank you all.
Absolutely. Well, I think as a community, we're so fortunate to have organizations like both of yours, and, really part of this conversation too. As we talk about community, or as we talk about affordable housing in the community, is, what are the existing organizations that have been working on this for, a long time. I think, this conversation is such an important one to have. It's been obviously exacerbated by, the pandemics this year. And so I think something important to talk about is that when the topic of affordable housing comes up in our community, many confuse the terms of affordable housing with housing affordability. And I think that makes some of these conversations difficult without really identifying what the difference between those two things are. And so, Justin, kind of start with you on this one. What do you think is most important for people to really remember during these discussions as it relates to the needs of Lexingtonians and the difference between housing affordability and affordable housing?
Sure. So generally defined, and again, with so many federal, state, local entities involved in these processes, there are very specific definitions at each level. Housing affordability tends to be the HUD definition of an individual family, whether they're low income, moderate income, or above, not paying more than 30% or 33 or 35%, depending on who you ask, of their income to their housing needs. So housing affordability, you can be making $80,000 a year and be cost burdened by your housing if it's making up more than 30 to 35% of your income. And so it's really important to note then that the most recent HUD data from 2018 says that 52% of Lexingtonians who rent are cost burdened by rent. So that means that 52% of our neighbors, of our community members, are paying more than 30% to 35% of their income on rent. And so that, is less money that's going back into our economy. That's less money that they can save to retire, to pass on to their children, to build intergenerational wealth, et cetera. So that can be a huge issue for many families who are making all the right decisions in all the right places. With housing, with affordable housing, typically we just say capital A affordable housing. That tends to be defined as subsidized housing. So whether that's subsidized through Section 8 or Section 202 or any of the federal or state programs for affordable housing subsidies, or nonprofits like Reach, like Lexington Community Land Trust, that put subsidies into homes to make them affordable to low to moderate income families. So the difference tends to be, whether you're putting money into the house, then it would be capital A affordable housing. And there's obviously such a great need for that here in Lexington, whether you're looking at down payment assistance with a program like Reach's, or just access to housing. We know that this is such a hot market, such a low supply of housing, and so prices are appreciating very quickly here in Lexington. And the average median home price in 2011 was $150,000, and now it's approaching $200,000. So we've priced out thousands of our fellow Lexingtonians on the housing market based on appreciation alone. So that affordable housing and that housing affordability both play into what folks can do, where they can live, what schools, somebody had asked about schools, what schools they have access to. There's just so many compounding effects of affordable housing and housing affordability on your health, on your education, et cetera. And so these are such important issues to tackle.
Absolutely. And that's, all very helpful information, I think, when, all of us are grappling with that conversation of affordable housing. So, Elisa, I would ask you too, to add your thoughts on, in your work, what is most important to note about housing affordability and affordable housing as it relates to the work that REACH does in addressing these needs.
To add to what Justin just said, let me start saying the affordable housing and housing affordability, although the terms are used interchangeably, that's the interesting part. They are very different, we already know. So in this case, housing affordability is actually one of the current major issues in Lexington. It used to be more like we are worried about only low-income families. Well, now it's even moderate-income families too, being in the issue that sometimes cannot afford a home that's affordable. So to add, I would like for everybody to remember that when it comes to makes a home affordable, comes down to a simple math. Just subtract your monthly rent or your mortgage from your take-home money, and that should just give you enough money to cover your necessities. So in other words, your income minus the obligation will give you that capacity to purchase. And sometimes that's one of the hardest part for people to understand, especially like, for example, if we have an individual with a stable job that has been there for 2 years and very good solid income, let's say that, for example, come up with $45,000 a year. Well, that actually kind of put the individual out of our programs and REACH because our programs are income eligible. So, but then this 45,000 is good salary. So let's say that this person also have just one obligation, a car payment for let's say $200 per month. So this person with no more debt, it has 10,000 to put down on as a down payment. You know that this person will afford around 143,000 on a house. And that is actually right now our few choices available in that price range. And please don't come in that it's not exactly everything is going to depend also on the type of loan, what interest rate, type of the credit scores and things. But this is around just to paint a little bit of the picture. So, and this is an individual with a job, stable and good income.
I think that's incredibly helpful. I mean, I do think that really helps put it in perspective as we're talking about, for some people, these kind of nebulous ideas of what affordable housing is. That really helps us, be put in that person's shoes and really consider, what that means to us and what kind of house that we can own and live in and provide for our families in that way. So, and Elisa, we'll start with you on this one. What are, some of your, it sounds like obviously the supply, of houses in that range of these affordable price houses is certainly one of the challenges, but can you speak to, what some of the other challenges are that REACH faces in achieving its mission here in Lexington?
Well, the major one that we have is the lack of available housing and the purchase price ranges that we cover. Right now, we have multiple customers are now looking for a home. They also have not only just stable jobs and income, but also are part of other programs, maybe with the vouchers from Section A and housing vouchers that can be combined. And they are still looking for a home. And when we find something maybe they cannot afford, or maybe they cannot apply the vouchers that they have. So it is a big issue. And at some point we are like with tied hands. What can we do? So not even through our charter program, which the charter program allow us to rehabilitate and acquire the home and all this, not only through that, because the charter guidance, for example, we can purchase an existing home for $172,000. And if it's a new construction, it could go up to 224. And not even with those options, sometimes it's difficult to find.
Absolutely. You know, Justin, to you as well, what do you all find, you know, again, I think you've spoken to some of them, but what do you all find that the biggest challenges that you all face in, you know, achieving your mission at the Land Trust?
Sure. So as we look at housing in Lexington, you know, Elisa's example of, you know, a family making a good solid salary, still having trouble finding that $150,000 and under home in Lexington, I think we can all acknowledge, you know, that market rate example of what we might call naturally affordable housing is getting slimmer and slimmer here in Lexington. You know, as we see land prices go up and up, you know, that's one of the biggest challenges for affordable housing nonprofits and for-profit affordable housing developers alike, is that land prices are such that it would require such a great subsidy, such a large subsidy. You know, if we can't find, you know, it used to be you could buy a small parcel of land for $10,000, $12,000. And so then building on that, you know, wouldn't require quite as much of a subsidy as it would require today, where that same lot is now worth $40,000 to $50,000. You know, and so looking at it from a purely economic standpoint, the land cost alone is one of the biggest obstacles that all affordable housing development in Lexington is facing. You know, that combined with, you know, competition for subsidies themselves, whether they be federal or state subsidies. In addition, you know, we saw this year the vulnerability of the Affordable Housing Fund. You know, in the initial proposed budget, the Affordable Housing Fund was going to be cut down to a bare minimum. You know, and I see Rick on this call. You know, Rick has done an absolutely amazing job doing as much as he can with the allocations that he has. But looking at it, you know, from the standpoint of the CZB study, which, you know, in 2014 promulgated that we needed $20 million per year in the Affordable Housing Fund to not only tackle the existing gap, but then make up for the loss of 400 affordable units that we lose every year. So we have a 6,000 unit, and this is in the year 2014, a 6,000 unit gap in 2014, and we're losing 400 units per year. So it's important to look at it from a land availability, from the subsidies, which thankfully City Council was able to restore that $2 million a year funding for the Affordable Housing Fund. You know, and that's a part of it. You know, we look at subsidies, as we mentioned, with the affordable versus affordability conversation. Subsidies are a big part of affordable housing, but there are many other strategies that cities can take on to reduce those barriers so that affordable housing nonprofits like ours can continue to build more. You know, looking at, we'll use Nathan Phillips, who wrote the book, The Affordable City, or Shane Phillips, sorry. He puts forth the 3 S's: supply, stability, and subsidy. That there needs to be a wide enough supply of housing, and that's market rate as well as affordable, so that $40,000 a year salary individual can purchase a $150,000 home. And that really takes the pressure relief valve off of so many other issues. You know, that way, if there's enough supply of market rate housing, you know, then individuals can choose their landlords as opposed to landlords choosing their tenants. And when landlords have the power to choose their tenants, they can increase the credit scores. They can increase, criminal history, so many things that disparately affect Black and Brown communities within Lexington. And so there's a lot to be done in terms of increasing the supply of housing in general. And then increasing the stability. So once you're in that housing, enacting measures that create a dignified housing situation for those individuals, tenant protections, just cause evictions, and things like that, that would allow folks to remain in the housing that's affordable to them. And then finally, looking at subsidy, which we already touched on a little bit. So really looking at it from a wider lens of, beyond just, oh, we need a $20,000 subsidy for this individual home. How can we create a wider strategy to ensure that all Lexingtonians have access to housing affordability, and if they need it, affordable housing?
And those are some really, really great points. And, something that we've been looking a lot at, obviously, as a land use, policy, where that comes from is the type of policies that, have been in zoning codes for so long, and this is across the country, that make it really difficult to develop the type of housing supply that we need. And so that's certainly been top of mind for us as we're kind of reading everything under the sun, as this entire country is really facing this affordable housing crisis. These like-sized cities, just like ours, facing these same issues. And what are those policies that we can update and modify and totally eliminate that can really increase the supply and diversity of the supply of housing that we have here in Lexington? When there was a housing study that was done back in 2017 in preparation for the comprehensive plan, it was done in partnership with quite a few organizations, us included. One of the most important points that consultant made was we need a diversity in supply of housing, and that type of supply, just getting to that point. I love that with the 3 S's. I'm glad that you mentioned that. Certainly has something to do with it, but anyway, all that to be said, that the policies, especially planning and zoning policies around, and that's working on updating our city policies, is so critical, and something that we've been looking at. I don't know if either or Elisa or Justin, if you all have looked at that, existing city policies, and what kind of updates and improvements can be made. Maybe if you've looked at similar cities or other organizations in other areas who are facing these issues, if there are any policies that you all have seen, that's certainly been in discussion anyway with either of your organizations.
Well, definitely the policies need to be checked. Actually, that is from what we can do as a community, only from a shared understanding that what is going on and how we can create maybe a coalition that works on policies that advance both goals, the affordable housing and the housing affordability, because there are organizations that are focused on one or maybe on another one, but working together definitely can work, help, especially if we were to change guidelines to the system programs. I cannot recall right now specific ones, but let me think. But also policies that increase access to credit, maybe utilizing alternative credit for some individuals, maybe increasing the income limits so people can just go and get from there. Policies that increase the production, preservation, accessibility of homes that are affordable for lower income households, policies that relate to land acquisition, maybe changes on cost of building, promoting fair housing, and fully reflect the community needs. Those are the changes that we're looking for on the policies. So at the end, producing affordable housing also can make housing more affordable overall. So ultimately, the ideal is to build a city with more room and more opportunities for everyone. So I would say that let's us work together to find solutions and to help create those policies that will allow individuals to have access to affordable housing and affordable homes.
It's such a great point. And I think, that's why I really enjoy having conversations like these, as our community really looks to, how can we work together? How can more organizations, with similar goals work together to try and tear down some of these barriers? Justin, do you want to speak to that as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think, looking at it from a perspective of especially land use policies, one of the biggest conversations in housing and especially affordable housing right now is what we call the missing middle. And missing middle housing tends to be, or your gentle density. So your duplexes, your threeplexes that are in the same neighborhoods as your single family housing so that, they have the same access to schools and that density really provides, so many opportunities, not only for more folks to live in our city and enjoy the benefits of Lexington, but the missing middle is absolutely critical in creating affordable housing. And between the year 2000 and 2014, Lexington cumulatively lost units of duplexes, threeplexes, and fourplexes. So on the whole, we lost, about a couple hundred units of missing middle housing. In the same time period, we grew our single family by over 20,000 houses. So looking at how we can fit all of the people, who want to live here. Lexington's growing at 1.2% per year. The PVA has put out numbers saying, we're going to need about 900 new houses per year in order to keep up with market rate demand for people living in Lexington. And that just can't be achieved with single family housing alone. So we really do need to look at that missing middle, especially housing. But there's so many policies like that, land use policies, adaptive reuse. LA had a great adaptive reuse ordinance where, they had incredible amounts of vacant offices in their downtown core. And everyone wants to live downtown right now, especially given the walkability and COVID and being outside. And so they put out a adaptive reuse policy that allowed downtown offices to be converted to housing. In Lexington, we have a pretty high vacancy rate for commercial properties in the downtown core. And we have a shortage of housing in Lexington. So, we can put two and two together and make some sustainable policies. And that's really what we need to look at is the sustainability. Oftentimes the policies might be enacted for short-term needs, whether it's, a temporary zone change, a community, things like that. And it's just really important to look at the larger picture of what all of Lexington needs. With 51% of our population coming in from out of county, that tells us that there's a whole lot of folks working in Lexington who want to live in Lexington as well, but can't afford it. So that's why Georgetown is growing at twice the rate of Lexington. Paris and Versailles are all growing so fast. So we really need some comprehensive looks at housing policies in general. And I will say briefly, the Neighborhood and Transition Task Force and the Mayor's Subcommittee on Housing and Gentrification have put out some great policies that would not only increase the amount of affordable housing, but really looking at it through that racial justice and equity lens that we need to be looking at it right now. This lack of market rate housing in Lexington is causing massive amounts of gentrification, especially in our Black, Brown, LGBTQ communities. And so we're really needing to look at it from that equity lens to ensure that all Lexingtonians have access to that housing, whether it's affordable or not, or market rate, and are not displaced from the places that they love to call home.
There are some great points that both you and Elisa brought up. And I think that, our community really has, with all the negative impacts that this year has brought, we do have an opportunity to really look at how we can be innovative and creative to really look at our policies and reimagine what we can do to accommodate this and focus on really the way that we're growing in an equitable way. And so that does, I think both of you all a little bit kind of led into my next question, which was how has COVID-19 impacted the work of both the organizations, and Elisa, we can start with you, and the ways that you all address the needs of your constituents and the needs of affordable housing here in Lexington.
Well, COVID-19 has had a major impact in our lives. It was challenging in the beginning because we were forced to innovate and develop new ways to work with our clients and the community partners. So what it was a challenge at the beginning, now it was kind of transitioning into a great opportunity. So today, at the beginning was very hard. We got to cancel lots of programmings, and we do a lot of workshops and have programs with community partners. So at the beginning was all canceled while we were learning. And so this challenge now as an opportunity, we were forced to learn. And now what we call a standard of living, or new ways to live. Every program that we do is online, it's virtual. So we have not stopped working in that regard. So our efforts, that we are still working to empower residents and prepare them for purchasing, and they are still purchasing and attending workshops, and we are in.
That's great. I know that, it's really forced everyone to pivot. And it's, good to look at it with those opportunities in mind as well. Justin, what about you all? How's COVID impacted your all's work and, possibly made you pivot in the way that you approach it?
Sure. So yeah, obviously it's tremendously affected both our lives here as staff, but also, the lives of our residents and our neighbors in the Davis Park community. We early on recognized as folks were being furloughed or laid off, the need to connect them with their lenders, to connect them with, all the different resources that were available at the time, to ensure that, they weren't missing mortgage payments. If they were on deferment plans, all the steps that we could take to ensure that, folks could stay in their houses despite everything that was going on. And we were, really happy that, all who needed assistance, we were able to connect them with that assistance. As we see those numbers hit record highs again, maybe we have to prepare for another, round of employment layoffs and furloughs and things like that again. We'll be absolutely happy to connect folks to those resources. Whether they live in our communities or not, we fielded lots of calls, since we come up on Google as affordable housing organization. So we're always happy to have those conversations. But I think COVID-19 will really impact housing in the long term. What we're expecting to see, what the housing industry is expecting to see, is a large number of foreclosures in the next 2 years due to folks missing mortgage payments during this time. And so what a lot of the housing advocacy organizations are looking at is the potential for a lot more gentrification, especially as lower income folks, are forced, to decide between making their mortgage payment and food payments. Those mortgages might go into foreclosure, and that foreclosure will then be sold at auction, and developers and folks who may gentrify neighborhoods could easily purchase those homes within the next 2 years and move into those communities, and flip those houses. So we're definitely bracing for a large number of foreclosures, maybe not 2008 to 2010 numbers, but definitely looking at long-term assistance programs that would be foreclosure prevention. We're also part of a coalition here in Lexington, really led by Lexington Fair Housing Council, that's working on renter assistance, because right now, renters tend to be the most vulnerable and vulnerably housed in our community. And we're seeing 100 evictions per week on the docket right now during the height of the pandemic. And this is in spite of the CDC guidance saying that there shouldn't be any evictions going on. At the peak in August, we saw 180 evictions per week. So obviously housing is becoming even more vulnerable, and COVID-19 is really exposing those vulnerabilities within our city here. So we really need to be mindful and create, the city's been good and responsive. The state's been good and responsive in creating temporary programs, but we need to look at the long-term impacts of what COVID-19 will do to our communities and start working today on how to prevent those outcomes.
No question. And I think that speaks to, what Elisa said before too, that, this is really the opportunity for so many organizations to come together to be working towards these solutions. It's organizations like both of yours, like ours that, that think about land use, like banks and lenders and, so many different, like the builders, like the developers. There's so many different industries that really play such an important role in these conversations. And I think this year has really just brought to light how much we need to do. So from your all's perspective, how can, an average neighbor or person like people that have tuned in with us tonight, what can they do to support increasing affordable housing? What can they do to get involved and support any of the initiatives that you all are working on or otherwise in the community? Elisa, if you want to start with that one.
Okay, well, just support the nonprofit working to promote affordable housing in Lexington and in Fayette County. Help others to become empowered through financial education. Help others to understand and recognize the differences between affordable housing and housing affordability. Education is essential to making any major changes. So that's a part that we all can do, helping the others. So at the end, I do want to just invite you to do as Gandhi said, be the change you want to see.
Absolutely, no question. Justin, what about you? Do you have anything you want to add to that as well about how people can get involved and what they can support to support your all's work?
Absolutely, yeah. I think with what Elisa said, supporting the nonprofits that are doing this work daily, whether it's the Urban League, Reach, Habitat for Humanity, there's a number of ways to get involved, whether it's volunteering, making donations, small things that can be done to ensure that all have access to safe, dignified, and affordable housing here in Lexington. I'd also encourage folks to talk to their neighbors. And that's both their physical neighbors who live right next door to you, as well as neighbors in communities that you might not visit every day. And this might be a post-COVID ask, but I think, recognizing the different challenges that different communities face, recognizing, what those individual neighborhoods may be, looking for in housing and development and land use is a very important aspect of what we want to see as Lexington grows, having that perspective not only of your community, but of all the communities, because every neighborhood has different needs. So talk to your neighbors, talk to folks that you might not normally talk to. Everyone on this call, has made the first steps, wanting to learn more I'm sure many of the folks on this call already support a lot of the work the different organizations here in Lexington are doing. So for that, I say thank you. But we look forward to continuing this conversation. And I think that's where we move forward with this, is continuing the conversation. So thank you to Fayette Alliance. We appreciate y'all having this. I will put a plug in. In the next couple of months, Lexington Community Land Trust will host a short film screening and a panel discussion with author Richard Rothstein, who wrote the book, The Color of Law, how American cities were segregated. And so this book goes into the history of redlining. It goes into the history really of how the racial wealth gap that exists within our community was in fact implicit government policies throughout the 20s to the 1970s and 80s. A lot of the deed restrictions, honestly are still on deeds today that are racialized deed restrictions. So, these aren't something of the past that ended with the passing of the Civil Rights Act. So we'll be hosting this film screening and panel discussion in January. So stay tuned to our website and our social media for the details of that. It will be virtual via Zoom. But we look forward to continuing this conversation that's so critical to so many in Lexington. So thank you all for tuning in today. We certainly appreciate it.
I do want to add something because
Please.
Justin, you are forgetting that we have this partnership going on, and there is a series of workshops that are coming up that host by both of us. It's Rich and the Lexington Land Trust. So be tuned. You will see that information. We invite everybody to be part of this. We will cover different topics, but everything from managing the money on holidays, how to spend the stimulus checks, and credit, and many other topics related to money and financial freedom.
Well, that's wonderful. Thank you. Thank you both for pointing both of those things out. And we'll certainly stay tuned and uplift those through our emails and our social channels as well to make sure that everyone tunes in. And I would point your all's attention to the chat. Ashley put both the websites for REACH and for Lexington Community Land Trust in the chat, as well as links to Richard Rothstein's The Color of Law and Segregated by Design. I certainly look forward to tuning into that conversation. Read that book, and it's deeply powerful and devastating to read. So couldn't recommend that enough to everybody. But if anyone has any additional questions that they'd like to put into the chat, we could take maybe one more, and we'll certainly accommodate that. But otherwise, we will conclude our panel discussion. And for those of you who would like to stay for a quick breakout session, we certainly invite you to stay around to discuss this conversation with other people on the call. We will have a recording of this session, and we'll make that available on our website by the end of the week. So if you or someone you know wants to tune back into this conversation, please be willing to share that with them. But thank you so much, Justin. Thank you so much, Elisa. And thank all of you who attended tonight for your time and thoughtful questions and attendance. So our next CPA 2.0 session will be January on ag tech. So please stay on the lookout for that information. And please subscribe to our email list just to stay up to date on any additional programming for tonight's session and other opportunities to advocate for smart, equitable, sustainable growth. So like I said, we'll certainly be uplifting the information that Justin and Elisa shared tonight about their upcoming opportunities. And you can follow us on Facebook and Instagram for more information there. But thank you all again. Elisa, thank you. Justin, thank you for your work in this community, which is hard and so needed. And thank you to my team at Fayette Alliance as well. We'll certainly be continuing these conversations conversations. We know how critical it is to have them and talk to other organizations in this community who are doing this really, really important work. So thank you all for being here tonight, and anyone that would like to stay, we'll be dividing you into breakout rooms. Everyone else, please have a lovely evening and a wonderful, safe, and healthy holiday season. So we will be breaking you all up into our breakout room. So Zoom will randomly separate you, and we'll be posting the discussion questions in the chat to help guide your conversation in the breakout room. So if one person in the group could please take short notes from the conversation, we'd love to have you all email those notes to info@fayettealliance.com for the session. It's always so interesting to learn more about what your groups are discussing, and also use that information for additional CPA 2.0s we might want to have in the future. So we'll ask to stay tuned. Ask you to stay tuned from that, and we will be.
And I'll jump in, Brittany. The breakout rooms are also not an option right now for some reason. Are they showing up for you? The bottom of your screen.
Yes, they are.
Oh, good. It must just be my issue.
Let's see. 1, 2, 3 breakout rooms. All right. All right. I will be sending you all into breakout rooms. And are the questions in the chat?
Yes, I'm putting them there now.
Perfect. All right. You all look out for the chat, and I will send you into breakout rooms, and I hope everyone has wonderful discussions. go ahead. You're back.
I don't think I meant to come back quite so soon. The wrong button. I apologize to Cabby. I think I exited right as she was asking a question. So in terms of the time, we're looking at starting construction of a few more houses here in the next month. But it's going to be about a 3 to 5 year build out for all the commercial spaces, the park to be finished. Thankfully, we do have a lot of upfront funding for those amenities in the neighborhood, but especially the commercial spaces and the park spaces, those are big capital projects that take time. So we're looking at really a 3 to 5 year timeline. Sorry, Cabby, I think you're still muted. There we go.
Yeah, is there an incentive for minority owners for the commercial spaces, or how is that being decided?
Yeah, that's a great question. So with the commercial spaces, because the land is owned by the community itself, the neighbors have set up a basically funnel to guide what goes into those commercial spaces, so that those commercial spaces are responsive to the community needs. The last thing we want are, pawn shops and things like that. So the commercial spaces are definitely going to be responsive to the community needs. And we're looking at how we can get ownership stakes, in terms of financial empowerment and equity into those spaces for the neighbors themselves, so that they can build that long-term intergenerational wealth.
It's going to make a real difference if they can take real ownership and have businesses in their community to be successful. That's awesome.
Absolutely, yeah.
Well, it sounds like you all had some good conversations, which I'm so glad about. So thank you, everybody. Thanks again. Special thanks to Elisa and to Justin, and for all of the rest of you who joined us tonight. Please stay tuned for additional conversations that we'll be having moving forward. And we hope at some point in the near-ish future that we can come together in person once again. But until then, if you have any questions or want to learn more about how you can be an advocate for smart growth in our community, please feel free to reach out to any one of our staff at Fayette Alliance, to myself, to Ashley McGuire, who's here on this call, or anyone else that you can find on our website. So once again, thank you all so much. I hope that everyone learned something about affordable housing that they didn't know in the past. And then my dog did. Henry is here with me. But I hope everyone has a wonderful night, and we hope to see you again soon. So stay healthy.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Great seeing you.
Good to see you too.
Bye-bye.
See you all.
Thanks, everybody.
Well, thank you.
Thank you so much. Appreciate you really being here. It was a great conversation. Bye. Have a good night.